Hey gamers, welcome back. Today we're going to tackle speed painting the British 71st Highland Infantry. They're quite an iconic group. These troops can look stunning on the tabletop once you paint them up well, and remind us of the glory days of beating Napoleon's marshals in Spain. Now I'm going to show you how to do them, quick and easy. Before we get started, if you haven't already, do please like and subscribe so you'll be reminded when I upload new content. So first things first, let's talk preparation. Firstly, you're going to need to gather your supplies, so get your paints together based off of whichever regiment it is you're doing. Paintbrushes, you're going to need an assortment from very fine detail up to large. Knives, pliers, pincers, and of course primer. Priming your models is very important. It's up to you whether you use black like I'm going to, grey or white. They all have their pros and cons. I prefer the darker just because it gives you that sort of recess, that shadow from the start. But go with what works for you. Next up we get to the base layers. I'm going to start off with a slightly larger medium brush, but then as we get to the more detailed bits we'll use smaller brushes. So the trousers are going to be grey, as are the blankets on top of their backpacks, and we're using uniform grey from Army Painter. So always remember when you're using your paints, do apply a little bit of water. You never really want to put them on fresh out of the pot. So yeah, apply a bit of water or flow improver, whatever your poison is, so to speak. Just take your time, get it in there. At the end of the day, this is the base coat, so it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, but just get it in there and cover all the areas that need covering. Next up we've got the red tunics, sort of the thing that everyone thinks of when they think of British troops, red tunics. And so we're using crimson from System 3 for this. It's a reasonably good paint actually. It's not a game miniature paint specifically, but it is good quality. It's got very good pigmentation. So yeah, I enjoy using it, and my advice would be, if you're in the store and you see something that you haven't used before, don't necessarily turn your nose up to it. Possibly, if it's not too expensive, give it a try because you might be pleasantly surprised. But just because it is red, it is quite bold. Just take your time here so you don't put red all over the grey that you just did in the previous step. Now we're going to transition to a more detailed brush because we're going to paint the muskets. So we're using leather brown from Game Colour. So just take your time here because now we're starting to build up the other coats, the other colours, sorry. We don't really want to start messing them up. So use a fine detail brush and just take your time to go over the parts of the figure that you need. In this case, the muskets. The Warlord Games miniatures from this period are pretty well detailed in my opinion, and so the muskets do stand out nicely, as do the bayonets, so just take your time and pick out the pieces you need to. As old Jonesy says, they don't like it up 'em. So now we're doing the bayonets, and we're using silver from Game Colour. Sometimes I get comments from people saying, why do you use such light colours? So we used the leather brown previously for the muskets, and we're using quite a bright silver here for the muskets. The answer is always the same. It's because of the scale of the miniatures. They are pretty small by anyone's expectations. Not quite as small as 6mm, but still. So I find because of the size of them, it's slightly better to go slightly brighter in your colour choice, because later on we will put washes on to dull it down, and we'll then highlight back up, whereas if we started off with dark colours, they would be quite dark and dull on the table. So that's the reason for me to do it that way. So I finally rid myself of the Tamiya flat flesh because it's pretty awful. Nice colour, but the paint's just bad. And this time we're just going to go with bone white from Game Colour. I have added a little bit of leather brown into it just to try and make it not quite so ghoulish, but it's a good colour. It works quite nicely. When we apply the brown wash later on, it kind of gives them a bit of life again. So that's what I've gone for this time. Again, it's quite bright, so you can see them at distance, so it works quite nicely. But we're just picking out the hands. Some of the figures have hands on the back poking through, so catch those as well. You've got faces, and you have the hands on the front. I also use this colour for the bread bags, so yeah, work on the bread bags at the same time. Although you could, if you wanted to, you could do them in a light brown, but I prefer this colour. So next up we're going to be painting the water canteens. These always stand out quite nicely on the British because they're quite a bright blue, and so we're using Magic Blue from Game Colour. Now I always find once I've put the blue on, the figures really start to, you can start to see a bit of life in them. I think the blue just stands out so nicely against the white, the red, and the sort of grey or white trousers that they wear. So I always enjoy this stage. You can really, I always feel at this point, you know the worst is behind you, or well, actually wrong. We've still got all of the belts to do in white later on, which is probably the worst. But apart from that, as far as the big picture is concerned, yeah, the worst is behind us and we're on the home straight. And so now with all of those sort of main base colours done, we apply a dark brown wash over them. That's going to really sort of merge everything together and sort of make it look like one figure, so to speak, one organic unit rather than lots of different colours. I always enjoy putting the wash on, that's for sure. So our question to you guys is, what is or what are your preferred Napoleonic armies? Please comment down below. So now we're going to be doing highlights and details, but the key thing to remember is take your time with these details. Just remember, we're aiming for a balance between speed and quality, so don't get too fixated. So starting with the webbing and the straps, we're using Ice White from Game Colour. And again, just take your time. This is the kind of the make or break piece. If you rush, you will make a mess of them, so just take your time. With these light infantry, on the top of their shako, they also had like a hatchwork. I can't think of the name. If you know it, please comment down below. Kind of a bit of tartan-esque. I really have no idea what it's called. I should have researched it before making the video. So put that in at this stage, along with all of the straps and belts. You can see it there with the green, the white and the red. Quite unique to them. And then we're going to go in and highlight the tunic and spots on the shako, as just pointed out in the photo. We're using Crimson from System 3 again, so just go in with your fine detail brush and just catch all those raised areas, and then just put a few spots around the rim of the shako. Then the final real step is to do the bronze parts, and so all the shako plates and the brasses on the uniforms, just go in with bright bronze from Game Colour and just touch those up. And once you get to this stage, you know you're pretty well there. So it's always very rewarding. And I'm not sure quite why, but just putting them onto the shakos, just for me, finishes the figure. It just doesn't look done until that's complete. Next, choose the correct facing colours. So for these guys, it's a sort of a dark sandy colour, and so I've used yellow-green from Model Colour, and I think it matches it quite nicely. Then if there's any other colours that we've already done in the previous steps, we just go back and use the same colours to do highlighting, then we apply flock, and then we get our finished figures. And there you have it, guys. A quick and easy method to speed paint your British Napoleonic troops. These chaps took me just over an hour, excluding the time for the wash to dry, so not too bad really when you consider the amount of detail in them. The techniques I've shown today, I think if you use them readily and quite routinely, you'll get into it and you'll be putting your troops on the tabletop faster and faster without sacrificing too much quality. Just again, when it comes to speed painting, it's all about finding that balance between quality and efficiency, and so yeah, if you use these tips you will find that balance quite nicely. So thanks for watching. If you found the video helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe, and then hit the bell icon for more wargaming tips and tutorials in the future. Also leave a comment below with your own speed painting tips, army of choice, preferred regiment, or whatever you are working on at the moment so that we can have a catch up about that. Anyway, thanks very much guys, and keep gaming.